weekend as a solidarity event?
Solidarity Street Gallery, it's
Yeah.
incorporated into it along with our annual meeting with the pancake breakfast at Arlington Hills Lutheran Church.
Oh.
Just to get
Well,
that plug in.
Is there going to be free ice cream? Just,
From who?
I don't know. I'm just saying.
Well, I heard that you had an angle on that, Joanne. We would love it.
Was that an offer?
I'll work on it. See what I
Okay,
can
cool.
figure out. We did want to offer the services of the League of Women Voters again this year.
That would be wonderful.
You want them because we can hand out information about ranked choice voting and then information about the change to the charter that people can vote for, as well as registered people to vote. So if you want us, we'll be there.
That sounds great.
Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Can't
Thank you.
guarantee the ice cream, but you know.
Whatever you can come up with.
Okay.
We're trying to combine it all so that every event has high attendance.
Remember how cold it was last year, that weekend in October?
It was.
It was extremely cold.
It's cold and it was a little rainy. Saturday
Yeah,
wasn't so
yeah.
bad, but yeah.
And then the following weekend was beautiful,
Yeah.
sunny in the 60s. It was like, oh,
Well, the gallery last year was in October. It was a little bit later.
that's right. It was later in the season.
Yeah.
It was, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, the Sweet Hollow Art Fair is going to be the same weekend too.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
So we'll be hopping on the east side.
We'll be hopping, and we're talking about the possibility of like a neighborhood garage sale and or yard sale in Railroad Island.
Oh, fun. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh. Good deal.
Bill, are you in your basement or something? Are you gonna put sheetrock up there?
Do anything. I'm just
Huh?
hiding from I'm just hiding from my children because they tend to make noise. So hopefully they won't find me down here and I'll be able to talk to you.
Actually, at first I thought it was like the booth of a bar. I thought maybe you were at a brew pub or something.
Should have thought of that. Nope.
Hi, Justine. It's nice to meet you in person or on Zoom.
Thank you. Nice to see everyone.
Hi, Janie. Hi, Athena. Hi, Jake. Hey, Marcy, Kelsey. Greg Copeland. And Mary Knappmiller is with us.
Yeah, and my computer died in your minutes, Robin, so I'm trying to get it back.
Actually, I do see Mary. Isn't that her in the background?
Looks like her.
Hi. We're waving to her. Hi, Mary.
He's waving to us too.
Tentatively, yeah. Hello, Patricia.
I'm here.
How's your ankle?
Oh, it's a lot better.
Good. Are you still
Thank you.
shimmering?
Am I simmering? I'm shimmering, not simmering, shimmering.
That's what I asked. Are you still shimmering?
Yes, of course I am.
Always. Hey, Kelsey. Good to see you.
Likewise, likewise.
Mr. Don Moore.
Hello.
Hey,
Don,
did you know who needed air conditioning?
I don't know if he does or not. He
Okay.
had mentioned something earlier, and I thought maybe he did. So I'm hoping the group can help him.
Okay.
so Rebecca, the only board members, or the only board member who I don't think will be here is Krishna.
Okay.
And I don't know about Lynette. Probably not.
She was actually doing good when I talked to her.
Oh, good.
Have you talked to her, Patricia?
Yeah, I talked with her last evening. I mean, I'd be surprised if she came though, because
Yeah.
we had an interesting conversation. We'll leave it at that.
Okay. So let's see. Cian. Cian.
I haven't seen her in the, I haven't seen it. And Bill, haven't seen or heard from them.
Nor our other representative.
No.
Okay.
Here comes Ikram.
Yay. Hi, Ikram.
Hi, Justine.
Okay, since it's about 22, why don't we go ahead and get started with introductions really quick. My name is Rebecca Nelson. I am the board chair of the Payne Phelan Community Council. Going to my right, Robin.
Robin Horkey, Admin and Outreach, Payne Phelan Community Council.
Joanne.
Joanne Ellis, I'm the legislative aid assistant to County Commissioner Jim McDonough. I also live on the east side, and it's hot over here in District 2. Just let you know.
Mary Knapp-Miller.
This is Stuart, present, secretary. Trying to get stuff on my computer here
Got it.
so I can do attendance.
Bill Dermody.
Hi, I'm Bill. I'm a planner for the city of St. Paul. Very glad to be here talking with you all tonight. Good evening.
Emma Seager.
Hey. It's like,
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm here with Bill, work for the City of St. Paul, planning and economic development. So nice to meet you guys.
Nice to meet you. Janie.
Hi, my name is Janie Atchison. I live on the east side and I'm also the treasurer.
Yay. Athena.
Hi, Athena Hollins, board member and representative for District 66B, which includes part of the east side.
Yay. Patricia.
That's worth shimmering for.
Yeah, right.
I'm Patricia Esta. I live on the east side and I'm board vice president.
Woo. Marcy.
Hi, I'm Marcy Ekstead, she, her, hers. I'm a resident and I'm also on the executive committee and on the board.
Thank you. Justine.
Rookie mistake, sorry. Hello, I'm Justine. And I'm new here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Jake.
Hi all, Jake Juris, board member and Eastside resident.
Kelsey. trustee.
Kelsey candidate, board member.
Thank you. Kay Berglund. Okay, we'll skip. Greg Copeland.
Good evening from the hot east side here. We just saw a sold sign go up on a piece of real estate over here, so I don't know, this transit-oriented development, we're hot enough even without it.
Mr. Lohr.
Hello, Don Lohr, resident of Railroad Island, current co-chair of the Railroad Island Neighborhood Group, and board member of Hope Academy.
Thank you very much. I think I greeted everybody, but I think we can go ahead and start on presentation, transit-oriented development by Mr. Bill Dermody and Emma.
Okay, I think I'll need help from Robin or Jack because I am not able to share my screen, but I'd like to do that.
Okay. So why don't you begin the conversation and I will pull up your PowerPoint.
I changed it slightly.
You did, okay. Do you have the current one that you can email me quickly?
I will email it to you right now.
All right, thank you.
Anybody know any jokes?
Oh,
No.
not funny ones.
Yeah, you don't want to hear my jokes. They're all crafted by 2-year-olds and 7-year-olds. They're terrible.
Oh, really? Some of them are the best.
The most recent one my son did was, I have a joke for you. Truck got a little truck.
Oh. Well,
That's the joke.
it's a start.
What was the one that was chicken yum or something like that?
Oh, yeah.
I just emailed it to you, but it's 22 megabytes. So
Okay.
it's
Well,
probably thinking.
Okay.
I will maybe introduce right at the top that I am, I don't come to your meetings that often, but I am your planner assigned to District 5. I have talked with Jack about the district plan update, and when you get to the point when you're working on that actively, I will be able to consult with that on the, both on the front end and as you go, and then when you go through the approval process. And with me tonight is Emma, and Emma's going to also have a role. You'll get to know Emma on the Line Station area planning. She's going to be the city's lead on that, although the county will be running that. So that's why we're both here tonight.
Okay, I just got your email, Bill, so let me open that up.
This will work eventually.
Okay, so. Okay, can everybody see that?
There we are.
All right.
Got it.
I don't know if it's just me, but it's oversized on my end where I can't see the left part of the screen.
Yes.
Yeah,
Same
I
here.
can't. Yeah.
Let me see if I can resize it. You're still not getting that left side?
No.
Right.
Okay, so how do you feel about if I go to the PDF, Bill, and when you have those, when those extra, how different is it?
It's not very different. It's, I think, all the same slides. I may have added one and it wasn't that important. I probably just changed a few words. So we go with the old PDF.
Okay, hold on, maybe if I enable editing, that will allow me to. Can anybody see that? No, not yet. How's that one?
Bingo.
Great.
All right.
Impressive.
All right.
Okay.
There we go. There's the
Okay.
next one. That's us. That's all of us. That's today. We're here to talk about transit-oriented development. Jack, I don't know if you've given any background, but I know you asked me to be here. So is there anything else you want to introduce with?
Thanks, Bill. We have talked about TOD a number of times over the last, the last couple of years, but more recently, we've talked about it a lot relative to the Rush Line environmental assessment. We've also talked about it in terms of generating ideas for like a green urban village over at Seeger Square, the possibilities for Payne and Fail in that intersection, also Payne and Maryland. And as you know, we've been working with MnDOT on the Arcade Street redo. So we've been talking about it up and down Arcade as well. So I think folks know generally what it is, but I think it's a good idea that we talk about it in more detail because it is so important to all kinds of things related to the district plan.
Sounds good. All right. Well, this is not too large of a group to jump in and interrupt me, so feel free to do that if any questions come up. Could you go to the next slide, Jack?
Sure. Oops.
So I know you all, or whoever was at the recent meeting, many of you know about the Rush Line because you sent a letter in about it during the environmental assessment phase, which is great. I also want to tell you about the H Line, 2 forms of transit that could impact developments here in Payne-Phalen. I want to talk about what transit-oriented development is, how it's covered in city plans or district plans, and how you all can plan ahead for TOD. So, next slide, please. Rush Line, that is basically from downtown St. Paul to White Bear Lake, a kind of bus that we do not have in the metro yet. The first bus rapid transit that is like Rush Line that will happen is the Gold Line through the east side of St. Paul along I-94 out to Woodbury, both directions. And that hasn't been built yet. We don't have quite something like this here, but it does exist in other metro areas. We do have BRT in the form of arterial BRT, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But Rush Line is different. It's mostly in its own dedicated guideway. This full route is about 75% in dedicated lanes. They're actually going to take a couple of the outside lanes from Phelan Boulevard for most of the stretch of Phelan Boulevard and dedicate them to buses. They will be in dedicated lanes, probably portions of Jackson Street and Robert Street in downtown. And of course, as it's along the Vento Trail in a corridor shared with the Vento Trail heading north up towards Maplewood, that will all be dedicated guideway for bus only. It's high amenity and often compared to light rail without the tracks. This type of bus rapid transit, it's every 10 minutes, at least in rush hour, a little less off the rush periods. It has, fancy stations, as I like to say, on-demand heats, real-time bus schedule information, that sort of thing. And it's a small thing, but people really like it. Flashing light that tells you when the bus is almost there. Very popular feature from the A line. You'll also see that along Rush Line. And you pay for it before you get on the bus, which makes it much faster. It's much faster than if people have to, tap their card or put their coins in before they ride. Several of these stations are in Payne-Phalen. The Carpenter, Maryland, Cook stations are all right on the border between District 2 and District 5. The Larpenteur station is technically in Maplewood, but it is so close to it's just on the north side of that intersection that it's basically St. Paul. Arcade Street, Payne Avenue, Cayuga and Olive are also going to impact Payne-Phalen. Could you go to the next page, please? And what good does this do you? Well, besides the benefit of transit where it, partially isn't today, we don't have transit at all along Phalen Boulevard. The University of Minnesota studied the potential impact in several ways, and this was a slide that really jumped out to me. The time-weighted percentage change in jobs that you can access within a reasonable commute, basically. And they say time-weighted because if you can get to a job in 20 minutes, that's worth more to you than if you can get to it in 60 minutes. So they took that into account, and the ones you can get to closer are basically worth more. And you can see along the Rush line, they studied the Gold line too, but along the Rush line, there is an increase in jobs you can get to by transit in the reasonable commute of from 5% up to 50%. Huge impact in, farther north on the corridor, but if you cut it off at Larpenteur even and just look at the impact in Payne-Phalen, it is quite an impact. Because that's that high amenity transit that allows you to move at any time of day relatively quickly. And it would give you, for anyone who's trying to go along the Green Line, a quicker commute to destinations along the Green Line. You wouldn't have to go all the way into downtown St. Paul to hop on the Green Line. You'd actually connect near Regents Hospital. So that's why it's such a positive change. Can we go to the next slide, please? Rush Line BRT, Bus Rapid Transit, is going to embark into station area planning and engineering, maybe at the end of this year, maybe in December, but we'll just say January of next year to be safe. It's about a 2-year process for station area planning, and engineering will take a little bit longer than that. Then there will be a couple of years of construction and hopefully open in 2026. A big asterisk next to all of this, not because there's anything special about the Rush Line to be concerned about with its timeline, but just any project of this size, just so large and lots of moving parts and funding sources and work to be done. These types of projects don't tend to end up on time when we're looking this far in advance. But for now, it could be open in 2026. Next slide, please. The other one, which some folks may not know about, is the H-Line Arterial BRT that Metro Transit announced just a few months ago is on their list. They announced the F, G, and H lines to follow up the first 5 that were already named, A, B, C, D, and E. A line, probably many people are familiar with, along Snelling Avenue through Roseville, Maplewood, St. Paul. It's already open. The other ones in St. Paul, B line is not open yet. Then the E line ends just at the western end of St. Paul, and that isn't open yet. But they're already planning ahead. It takes a few years for these to come online, and H line will be a very unique one. It runs generally along Como Avenue and Maryland Avenue. And what's unique about this is it's another way to get to downtown Minneapolis and the University of Minnesota area, lots of jobs over there, that does not involve going through downtown St. Paul. Many people do want to go to downtown St. Paul, but many people are on their way to somewhere else when they're going through downtown St. Paul. And this is a real equity benefit for people on the east side of St. Paul wanting a more direct transit route. It's going to be higher quality than the 61, which runs, generally up on Larpenteur, although it has a more varied route actually through Payne Phelan, but through most of its routes up on Larpenteur. This will be more direct. This will be higher amenity stations like the A line. Unlike Rush Line, this is not a dedicated guideway. It's in mixed traffic, but it does have off-board fare payment, which means fast onboarding and offboarding, and these high amenity stations, including the heats and the ticketing and the real-time arrival information. So could we go to the next slide, please? Oh, I have another map. Two great maps. This one just came out like a month ago, where they plopped some potential stations on the map. This is far from final, but Metro Transit wanted to put out some potential stations, and you may want to start thinking about this when we're talking about transit-oriented development, because it doesn't just happen anywhere along a transit line. It happens, it tends to be focused around the stations where people, actually access the transit. So we've got a few of those on Maryland through your district. Next slide, please. There we go, timing. So route planning the timeline for that has not been announced yet, but probably in the neighborhood of 2026 to 2028, they will get into the details of planning on that, which sounds like a long way off, but in transit planning timelines, it's not that far off. It's great to be on a list that far away. That's pretty realistic. And they hope to have it open by 2030, which would mean construction somewhere in the 2028 to 2030 timeframe. That's close enough that you should be planning ahead for it. Next page, please. And how should you plan ahead for it? The rest of this presentation is less about the transit and more about the transit-oriented development. TOD is an acronym we often use to stand for transit-oriented development. And this is compact, walkable development that is designed around high quality frequent transit, such as the H line and the Rush line. Usually there's a mix of uses, although individual stations can sometimes be more focused on housing or more focused on employment. And it's designed to allow people to live and work with less dependence or no dependence on a personal vehicle. Cars will continue to exist. Rush line going in will not instantly convert all of the east side to not needing a vehicle, but on average, it tends to decrease the reliance on vehicles, which is great from an individual cost perspective, environmental perspective. There are lots of benefits to that. We had a question come in, so maybe I'll answer that. Janie asked, for these letter lines, A line, H line, etc., do they use a dedicated lane or share whereas and just have fewer stops? The answer to that is they share lanes with traffic and they have fewer stops than regular transit. So it's about half the stops, but the stops that remain are upgraded stations with higher amenities. This is going to be interesting. Frankly, on Maryland, it's on where the A line is on Snelling, it's a 4-lane road. Maryland is partially 4-lane road, partially 3-lane road. So there may be stations where they block traffic for the time that people are getting on and off the bus. But with prepayment, that should be fast, and we'll be learning a lot from the B line, which will actually be experiencing the same situation along Selby Avenue and Marshall Avenue in St. Paul before this. So we'll be learning a lot of lessons from that. Metro Transit will to make it operate as efficiently as possible on Maryland. Okay, so next slide, please. The transit-oriented development is not about parking, but this question always comes up at some point. What about parking? People are still going to use vehicles, absolutely, and parking continues to be important, but the nature of parking changes when you have high amenity transit that comes in like this. Any vehicle parking that's provided in new developments or redevelopments is more likely to be underground in structures rather than on the surface in order to allow for more efficient land use. You can fit more on the land if the parking is not taking up quite as much space like in a shopping center, and more of it is underground. Bike parking is also more important. People use bicycles more in transit-oriented development areas. And just to note, I think you are aware, there is a parking study, citywide parking study, looking at our requirements in St. Paul, and the minimum parking requirements could be eliminated soon for these transit-oriented development situations, if not eliminated citywide. And that doesn't mean parking won't be provided. We do have parts of the city that are already without a parking minimum, such as along the Green Line, and developers typically still provide quite a bit of parking, maybe a little less than they would have otherwise under the city parking requirements that are in the books elsewhere, outside of the Green Line area. Next slide, please. Why TOD? Why do you want transit-oriented development in the first place? There are a few benefits. I alluded to some of them earlier. Access to employment. This allows more people to access jobs via transit, or even as pedestrian or bikers, because the development tends to occur closer together than without transit-oriented development. That map I showed earlier with the percentage change in access to jobs via transit comes to mind. You can access more jobs. Decreased cost of living. If you're less likely to need to own a car, you could save potentially a lot of money. People spend thousands of dollars a year on vehicles. I forget I should know the figure off the top of my head, but it's in the thousands on average per person in the United States that they spend on owning a vehicle. And obviously bus passes are much cheaper than that if you can then change how you get around and not rely on a vehicle. That doesn't mean there will be no vehicles, as I've mentioned a few times, but for many people, they are able to drop a vehicle from their household. Health and well-being is a big one. TOD promotes a more active lifestyle, more walkability, more ability to use transit, and just walk to neighborhood amenities that are more closely concentrated. It's better in terms of efficient transportation networks. The overall distances of car trips are shorter, as well as increasing the number of people using transit. Economic development benefits are there as well, especially this has been proven for a rush line type of dedicated guideway, BRT. It provides, the Green Line is our local comparison. Nationally, BRT projects like that provide around 80% of the economic development benefit of light rail transit. So nearly the same amount. Development is happening in this market right now with such a housing shortage, no matter what. But certainly over time, it has been proven that there's much more development, more intense development near transit like this than not near transit like this. There's also reason to believe that there's some impact on the arterial BRT projects like the H line or the A line. Certainly we've seen it along the A line in St. Paul. And environmental protection. Reduced vehicle usage is the big thing, and having a less sprawling metropolitan area where the development is more concentrated means shorter trips for those who do use cars. So that's environmental benefits for people in the neighborhood and region-wide. Next slide, please. I have a series of TOD examples I'll go through here, and I think just about all of them are local. This is along the Green Line in St. Paul, Raymond Avenue Station, and I thought about Payne Avenue when I saw this. The development here and in the subsequent slides is probably more intense than you will expect to see along Payne Avenue, even after the rush line is complete. But there are still some lessons maybe to be learned from this situation that carry over. There are a few historic buildings here along University Avenue, a converted warehouse that now has housing in it, a old commercial building, maybe a bank building, I'm not sure, on the corner there that's got some offices in it and a little retail on the ground floor. And then you see the new development behind it, and it's got a parking garage back there as well. This is probably not happening without the Green Line. This sort of transit-oriented development, you can see the buildings up against the street. You can see the pedestrian-oriented nature where all the entrances are off the sidewalks. You can see the intensity of development, many people being walking distance to the station that's right across the street here, and the lack of surface parking. The parking there is parking here quite a bit, hundreds of spaces, I think, but it's all underground, underneath that modern orange building in the back. Next slide, please. Not too far from there along the Green Line, this is senior housing. Episcopal Homes, senior housing near the Green Line, 3-story, transit-oriented development again. It's, it's not commercial, so it's a little different. People are not walking into all parts of this building. There's only one main entrance, but the idea is it supports a pedestrian-oriented streetscape here, as well as provides many people, all those folks who live in the building, easy access to transit. The Green Line is right there. Next slide, please. This and the next slide are examples of affordable housing in a mixed-use situation with restaurants and shops on the ground floor. The St. Paul HRA, Housing and Redevelopment Authority, had a hand in this, and in the next slide, right on the Green Line. So there you go, there's Hamlin Station. The other one was at Dale. Some examples of local businesses in both cases. I don't know that Los Campo is there anymore, but the Magic Noodle is. The HRA tries to support local businesses when they can in these types of developments, in addition to providing affordable housing. Next slide, please. Here's an example. The last few were along the Green Line. This is one along the A line. And don't pay too much attention to Whole Foods. The idea is not here to get Whole Foods and various places along the Rush Line or anything like that. It's the thing to pay attention to here is really the form. Even if it's more intense than what we might see along the H line or the Rush Line in Payne-Phalen, it's a grocery store that is up against the street. How often do you see a grocery store that doesn't have a parking lot that takes 3 or 4 minutes to walk across in front of it, right? This is a pedestrian-oriented streetscape with parking behind. Obviously, many people drive to a grocery store, but this is what transit-oriented development looks like when you have a grocery store involved. And of course, all that housing behind it, the 4-story housing above and behind the Whole Foods. There's also, I think, other retail along the street to the right there along Selby Avenue. Next slide, please. This is another one that made me think about Payne Avenue with that historic 2-story building there on the right, and then the new construction across Snelling Avenue. This is Snelling and St. Clair. Again, that's 6 stories. That's probably more intense than we might expect to see near any of the stations in Payne-Phalen. But it's something that we should be thinking about. How do the existing historic buildings along Payne Avenue, even if they aren't officially designated historic, how do they work with new construction like this, and how can it all support transit-oriented development? And really, honestly, that existing building, that is transit-oriented development. It was streetcar-oriented development when it happened many, many decades ago, but it works very well for arterial bus rapid transit as well. Next slide, please. And here's another one that made me think, are there any buildings like this in Payne-Phalen? This was a vacant warehouse office building, the Carlton Place Lofts. Now it's apartments along the Green Line. It's a pretty big building. I could think of a few that are a little smaller, but reminiscent of this in Payne-Phalen. Maybe you can too. Next slide, please. So what does city policy say about TOD? The citywide comprehensive plan, the 2040 plan for how development will happen in St. Paul, says a few things. It says that most of our economic growth and population growth is going to be focused around transit in St. Paul. So that's where the growth is going to happen. That's where the opportunity for change is going to happen in Payne-Phalen. Where is the most likely place for development? Well, development could happen anywhere, but we know that Rush Line and H Line are probably going to be magnets for that. We also have policy for neighborhood nodes to be supported throughout the city. So these are nodes of activity that support people's daily needs within walking distance. You aren't going to have all of your needs probably within walking distance, but the idea is to provide at least some of your needs, some destinations for everybody in the city, really, within a short walking distance. And if new development is focused around these nodes where the transit stations will be, that helps everybody who lives nearby. It gives them walkable destinations as well. Next slide, please. So what is a station area plan? It guides the developments, private development and public realm improvements around a proposed transit station. What do I mean by public realm? This is like sidewalks, trees, lighting, parks, that sort of thing that anybody can enjoy, whether they own that land or develop that land or live there or not. You know, anything that's in the public realm. A station area plan, such as those Rush Line station area plans that are coming up next year, that will get started next year, they could be an addendum to the comprehensive plan, the city's comprehensive plan. That basically means they're official. You know, they're part of the comp plan, and anytime something happens at the city, whether it's a funding decision or a zoning decision, that plan would be referred to. It's official policy. The city council and the planning commission are looking at it. The chapters, as it's laid out for this upcoming station area plan effort along the Rush Line, are proposed to include the station area today. So basically a snapshot of what's going on now. The future of the station area, public realm chapter, future character areas chapter, movement, which is basically transportation, bike, walk, and other transit connections, and getting there, which is another way of saying implementation. Ramsey County has not yet put out their request for proposals. They're going to have a private consultant lead this effort for them, but in their request for proposals that they've gotten draft form to this point, these are the chapters that they propose to include. And that's not written in stone, but just to give you an idea of the direction they're headed there. Next slide, please. So how can your neighborhood plan for transit-oriented development? This Rush Line station area planning effort that I mentioned starts at the end of this year or early next year. Get involved in that. They will have advisory committees. They will also have several rounds of community engagement opportunities. Be ready to stay in touch on that. I also know that your district has been looking at updating your 1979 plan. As a planner for the city, I think that would be very helpful to you. The 1970 plan does not, 1979 plan, it's nearly my age, doesn't tell us much that's helpful to direct policy. So we have the citywide comprehensive plan, but unlike just about every other part of the city, we don't have much that tells us what's special and important to Payne-Phalen. So that would be great to change. I know that will be a big effort to do. But you can address transit-oriented development in that plan. What aspects of it are important to you? And a city-initiated zoning study could follow either of those efforts. A zoning study is basically changing the zoning districts in, along certain corridors to implement a plan to advance transit-oriented development or other development goals that these plans have. We have a question in the chat. Don asked, would station area planning include building a pedestrian bridge that would connect Railroad Island to the Cayuga station? Yes, it absolutely could. That would be that would fit right into the transportation chapter there. If it became official policy, it would also increase the chances of being able to get funding for it. That is certainly something that should be discussed. I know there are some difficulties with it, so we'll be sure to discuss those with Ramsey County and their consultants when the time comes. But Don, I've certainly heard that idea before. They're aware of it, and it's going to be considered at least, if not included in these upcoming station area plans. Next slide, please. So what's happening in Payne Phalen? I just took a Google tour. I spend time in your district too, but for convenience and being able to get consistent photographs, I took a Google tour of Payne Phalen and thought about some sites that really jump out as TOD opportunities in Payne Phalen. And this is one just north of the Phalen Senior Lofts on Payne Avenue, 1 block north of Phalen. I think it's an HRA city-owned lot. You could envision something maybe slightly smaller scale, but similar in nature to those photographs I showed along the green line. There are some HRA lots west of this as well. Next slide, please. And going the other direction on Payne Avenue, some of these lots are owned by the city, some are not, but there's green space and parking lots headed this direction, auto-oriented uses. Will this look like this in 10 or 20 years? Should it? Is this an opportunity? What can we do here to advance TOD or other priorities of Payne Phalen? Next slide, please. Here's a big one, Seeger Square at Arcade and Phalen. Both the upper parking lot, I'll call it, in front of the grocery store and the other retail, and the lower parking lot strike me as opportunities for transit-oriented developments, perhaps phased and incremental. I'm not talking necessarily like the shopping center is gone, because the shopping center certainly provides value. There are businesses that people use. There are jobs, local jobs in there, but incrementally over time, you could imagine it becoming more intense and that parking being used differently or shifting to underground or moving behind buildings. That's a lot of asphalt that maybe could be put to better use. And by the way, even on day after Thanksgiving, almost all empty. This is never full. This parking lot's never full, and even less so the one down low along Phalen Boulevard. That parking lot is really underutilized and maybe an opportunity. The station location, by the way, is proposed to be just west of Arcade at the top of the hill there across from Seeger Square. So easy walking distance, just a walk signal to get you across Arcade Street to this site. So an excellent TOD opportunity, I think. Slide, please. Along the H line, so those were sites more along the Rush line. Along the H line on Maryland, there are some sites too, maybe smaller sites, but northwest corner of Maryland Earl is one that comes to mind. This is HRA owned, and I just had a meeting earlier this week, last week, with my colleagues, HRA staff, wondering what to do about this site, wondering what the best use of it is, and should it wait to be developed for transit-oriented development. They're also wondering what the priorities of the district council are on this, what your ideas and priorities are for this site. And they'd certainly love to connect with you directly on this if you did have a lot of strong opinions on it, because they're wondering what to do with it. But it strikes me as an opportunity because there will be a transit station right here in the future, or maybe on the other side of Earl. Next slide, please. These parcels were acquired by Ramsey County as part of Maryland Avenue work. This is just west of Payne, just a half block west of Payne on the south side of Maryland. But it really strikes me as an opportunity for development. You can imagine some sort of multifamily maybe on this site that is taking advantage of upgraded transit. Next slide, please. Near Arcade in Maryland, there are several parking lots. They're actually somewhat well utilized for parking lots. They're never full really, but you've got the 2 pharmacies and several other, some small retail and restaurant businesses. But just overall, there's a lot of asphalt near this intersection. And you wonder, the 54 bus comes through here, and that's one thing, but you wonder how the H line, even higher level of transit service, might change this intersection and those asphalt parking lots in the long run. Certainly those pharmacies, that's a standard design for pharmacies, but there are other ones. You often see pharmacies on the ground floor with 2 or 3 stories of apartments above them. Is this a location where that should be encouraged? If the development scene changes when transit comes in and different value is placed on that land. Next slide, please. Yeah, that was my last one. So, Jack's telling me, Jack and Patricia both said we talked about that Maryland Earl site. So that's good. Maybe there's some follow-up that might need to happen on that as well, which is fine. I'll check back with Nick Betcher, who's my colleague, and see if he had any follow-up questions for you on that. But glad you all have discussed that already. This is my contact information and Emma's. Emma, anything you wanted to add to that presentation?
No, I don't, Bill. I mean, we're just at the very beginning stages of the visionary planning, and was excited to get into it and have you been involved in it. So it's going to be a long process, but it'll be really rewarding.
So we'd be glad to take any other questions you have. Thanks for jumping in as we went, but go right ahead.
Really nice presentation. Thank you.
Patricia has a question, and then Don has a question.
So thanks a lot for that. And so this is something that actually has just came to my attention today, because I've been noticing turning off of Phelan Boulevard onto Wells that the streetlights are out, and the street lights are anyway. And so I ended up talking with someone in Public Works today who said they're having a lot of trouble with the wiring being stolen out of the lights. And so, I mean, this might be an opportunity to be thinking about as we're, putting in the rush line. There's a lot of open area there, and wanting to add amenities. Is there something about the design of the streetlights? They're cute. I mean, they're lantern style, but is there something about them that makes them a little more vulnerable to theft, considering that they're on their own? I just ended up talking to a very nice man in Public Works today about the problem, and thinking about how we might be able to have some more, at least reflective lighting, because it's a dangerous turn in the dark off of Phelan Boulevard onto Wells. So is that something that then you can learn from past challenges, future planning about how to make the infrastructure robust so that we can have nice things on the east side?
I don't know, but that is certainly a good thought, and I'm glad you reached out to somebody. I talk to our street lighting folks pretty regularly on these transit projects and other things, so I'll bring that up too. So I don't know if there is a good resolution for it, but we should be thinking about that. So thank you for bringing that up. It looks like in the chat, Don asked about the significant increase in working from home during the pandemic, and to some degree, everybody expects that will be a permanent increase to some degree, probably not to the degree it was at the height of the pandemic. Has transit modeling been updated to reflect that? And as far as I know, the answer is no. But I involved in a conversation about that tomorrow morning. It's on Metro Transit's radar. They are actively thinking about that. I expect that there will be updates to it, but there haven't been yet.
Thanks. Just curious.
I just have a question about these are for sure happening, or is the money up in the air still? Because I know every year at the state level, there's fights about transit funding.
Good question. I would say they are not for sure until they are funded. These projects are not funded yet. There is a semi-reliable funding source for the H line there's federal money that is allocated to the region for all sorts of transit projects, and the region has started what they anticipate will be an annual tradition to fund to spend $25 million every funding cycle every 2 years on arterial BRT projects such as the H line. So that's not funded until it's funded, but there's a general commitment to funding those sorts of projects for years to come. The Rush line it looks like it will be eligible for federal funding. They simply aren't to the stage where they're asking for it yet. Even the Gold Line hasn't officially asked for their funding or received their funding. I think they might have put the ask in, but they haven't officially received it. And the Gold Line project is a couple of years ahead of this one. So we won't find out. And that is a competitive process. So just because it's eligible for federal funding doesn't mean it will happen. That sort of project doesn't likely happen without federal funding because that's over $200 million of federal funding. So we'll have to stay tuned on that. Ramsey County thinks it's a competitive project that will do well against other regions and it's likely to get funded, but we'll have to see.
So let's talk a little bit more about that. So I'm not sure if the funding for BRT is exactly like LRT, but the way these projects work is that the federal government will only consider giving funding to a project that has some kind of preliminary work and guarantees and money from the local governments. So at the local level, at least in the Twin Cities, it's the Metropolitan Council and the counties. And in some cases, the cities throw in a little bit of money, but it's mostly the counties and the Met Council. So the good news is that for the Rush line and the H line, the Met Council and Ramsey County have already committed to them. So half of that funding is already dedicated, which means that all they have to do is put together actually an application. It's hundreds of pages, but they have to apply to the federal government for the other half of the money. And so the projects, this is where they can slow down a little bit. For instance, the Obama administration greenlighted a lot of transit projects. The Trump administration, not as much, right? So they go faster when the local governments already put the money together. And Ramsey County has been really good about putting the money together for these projects. I don't know how to do it, but they do it. And that has some trust with the Met Council, who then puts their money forward because they know the county already has the funding.
Well, I'm sure Joanne would tell you this. I know how they put it together. it's that half-cent sales tax.
Yes.
That helps a lot, and they plan ahead and save for it.
Perfect. That answers my question. Thank you.
Can I ask Bill a question? Greg Copeland. Bill, what is the capital cost estimate on the H-line at this point, as far as the Ramsey County share?
Greg, as far as I know, there is no capital cost estimate for the H-line yet. If there is, it's brand new. I haven't seen it. Other arterial BRT projects are in the range, that can be quite, there can be quite a range, but somewhere between 50 million and $100 million total. This is on the longer
maybe
side.
Joe.
This is a pretty, the H-line is
Does
pretty
Joanne,
size. So.
Joanne Ellis, do you have a number for us?
I have no idea.
No idea. Okay, thank you.
Good question, though. We do have something of an idea on the Rush line. That one is, there's an official number on it, but it's something like $440 million total.
The projects in Minneapolis that are similar to the H line, so the B, C, D, they were all about 200 million apiece. And that's to, the cost is lower because you're not building rails, you're not building a new roadway, but you have to buy the buses, you have to build the stations, you have to move utilities around underneath of the stations so that they don't interfere. So that's where the capital costs go.
There was a report from February 24th, 2021. It looks like from the Met Council that estimated 104.5.
If I could, Greg Copeland again, I'd like to just say that I was asking that question because it seems to me that the timelines on the two projects really are inverse to the needs that are there to be met. It seems like the H line would have a lot more immediate impact on people who are alive and looking for work than another cement road up to White Bear Lake. We've already got a cement road to White Bear Lake. It's called 35E, on the Easy Pass lanes that were built at considerable public expense. We have nothing like that that goes over to Rice Street on Maryland, however. So if we want to build some transportation quickly, that'll serve some people quick as in not waiting until 2030, I think the county should be looking at changing some of those priorities, frankly, and letting our elected officials know that, we can wait a little bit longer on another cement road that's going to ruin the Vento Trail to White Bear Lake, frankly. Thank you.
Greg, it's good to know that, but I will note, as far as the way these get funded, that delaying Rush line would not have any impact on the speed of H line. They're kind of two separate funding pots coming from two separate things, but it still may, if the county got squeezed at some point and had to make decisions, it would be good to know what the priorities are locally.
So what do you all think about the possibilities of developing some of those surface parking lots?
I think it sounds exciting for me. We do have a lot of parking along our commercial corridors, and I know that there was a study some years ago that demonstrated that the parking that we do have or have historically had has always we've never been squeezed or had a need to get more parking quickly. And asphalt gets really hot when it's hot like this outside right now.
Yeah, I particularly think that that area around Seeger Square it's just kind of sad. So it's not, I mean, there's nothing inviting about it. There's nothing that draws you in. It's kind of I mean, to me, it's kind of a fail. So in terms certainly of its land usage. So I mean, I'd be very happy to be thinking about doing something with that whole area, those two parking lots.
I feel the same way. I also get really sad when I drive by and there's just nothing there. Very sad. And I also like the idea of developing that green area off Maryland Avenue. I live right by there, and every time I drive by, it's like, oh, that space would be awesome to be used for housing or a cooler green space. I like the idea that it was even marked for another project. Great.
I think it's a great spot for a street level coffee shop and some high density above.
Yeah, I'm really enthusiastic about developing some of these open spaces because we know we need more, especially housing, but sorry, getting over a cold. But even business-wise, like it's so much better to have something there than to have this empty space. And coming at it from a different perspective, I'm actually friends with a woman whose husband helps manage the Seeger Square space. And he says that because it's so empty and there's not really anything going on, it just attracts a ton of people who will literally be working on their cars in the middle of, you know, this parking lot and like get into fist fights and like, you know, it just kind of like empty space where you can do things like that attracts problems. And they spend a ton of time and energy and money just trying to make sure that people aren't like, you know, repairing their cars in this public space and then leaving dead cars there that they later have to tow away. So if we could develop that space, make it useful, inviting, I think that's a win.
Yeah, I like what Athena just said. Bill, how quickly did those apartments go up with the green line going in there? I know like in my mind it happened pretty quickly, but all of a sudden I'm kind of old and I was like a teen when it started. So maybe it wasn't that quickly.
I think the green line opened in 2013. Is that right, Jack? June of 2013?
It opened in June of 2014.
2014.
So 7 years ago.
Yeah. So those depends on which photograph I was showing there, but I think the Los Ocampo building was on the early end, and that was after the green line opened. So maybe 2015. Hamlin Station was probably in that same time period. Those two historic lofts, warehouse buildings with a brand new building behind it, that was newer, like 2018 or so, 2019. You know, nationally, you start to see an increase in development around LRT or BRT. You get a small bump once it's announced that funding is committed. That tends to be when there's one bump. But then the biggest bump is when it actually opens. And of course, a big development takes a year or two to happen. So you might expect around the time it opens, a year or two after is when you'd see a lot of development. The funding commitment helps, but there's something about actually seeing it in operation that really gets people ready to invest.
Well, also to tag off of what Bill said a few minutes back is that with the Rush Line, because there's an actual dedicated roadway, developers then know that the county and Metro Transit are not going to move that bus line because they're building that special dedicated busway. So that gives them more confidence to actually make that investment because they know it's going to stay there. And as long as we're on the topic, I think the A line on Snelling Avenue opened in, if I'm remembering correctly, in the summer of 2017. So it's only been 4 years. And there's already been not just the developments Bill showed, but on the north side of 94, there's been development as well. Between Snelling and 94.
So I came in late, but I know around the 280 area along the Green Line, maybe Bill talked about this, but there's a massive transformation at that point as well.
Right.
Yeah, I just showed the photos at the Raymond station there, but that's the tip of the iceberg. Heading west there towards the University of Minnesota, that whole stretch is changing like crazy. I would not expect that level of development in Payne-Phalen with the Rush Line opening. That's fairly extreme. There are some special situations that are a little different there. Namely, we're farther from the University of Minnesota and downtown Minneapolis. But that development wouldn't be happening at that intensity if it weren't for light rail being right there on University Avenue.
Marcy had a comment in the chat, which is, I just wanted to point out that it's important to have ongoing community involvement in the development of these spaces. So I think it's important that we all continue talking about it and bringing it to other people's attention. Because I know a lot of folks would be concerned about gentrification ending it. And that's a good point. Thank you. Patricia, did you have something? Oh, go ahead.
But that was, that was mine because I actually know some people who lived along the Green Line who now live on the east side because they kind of got squeezed out. And I think we maybe know more now about how that happens. But I don't know that we've, are there ways that this is going to be working hand in hand with housing policy?
Did they get squeezed out because their property taxes became too high?
Yeah, I think the rent was, but that happened on rent. That happened. Someone I know who moved into the apartment building next to on East 7th next to Mississippi Market. Rent was affordable. She was active on the east side and rent went up and she lives somewhere else now. So.
Yeah, it happens to businesses too. And there's been something of an effort to get local, especially BIPOC owned businesses to own their space in this region. That becomes very important because if you don't control your rent, you don't really control your space. You could be priced out at any time. That's certainly part of it. There have been a lot of talk about what to do about rents. There was a safe housing ordinance that was passed citywide in St. Paul, but then repealed because of legal concerns just recently. It's obviously been on a lot of folks' minds. Rent control is on the ballot this November as well in St. Paul. There are a lot of people, Sienna, as you know, on Planning Commission and City Council who are very concerned about this. But I hope that if that is a concern, and I'm not surprised that it is front and center through these planning efforts and keep bringing it up. It's very important. People have identified the issue, but nobody's figured it out perfectly. There aren't silver bullets to this. We need to, if that is a concern, we need to be very aggressive about having it at the front of policy, or else development just happens and people get displaced and life moves on, not to the benefit of everybody.
So, Bill, what are the conversations inside of PED and the city about the need for an economic development strategy along with transit and land use planning.
I would say it hasn't been framed in those terms lately. You know, we have land use planning strategy and we have anti-displacement strategy that's mostly focused on housing. That's in the works, and there are a lot of people working on the housing end of it.
Right.
As far as an economic, you know, an equitable economic development strategy, that idea has been tossed around, but I wouldn't say it is actively part of what PED is doing right now, or at least not in those terms. That's not the terminology we're using right now. And if it should be, you know, that's the sort of thing you folks can help influence as we go through these upcoming planning efforts.
Well, the reason I bring it up is that it was something that the board talked a lot about last month in relation to the Rush Line. And so I'm wondering how that question from the board could be framed for city leaders.
Yeah, I don't know. Good question. But I would say if it's a concern, keep bringing it up.
Okay.
So I'd like to point out that Janie was not a teenager 7 years ago. Just so you know.
Thank you.
And Athena said that she has talked about it with this issue with Mitra. I can never pronounce her name, I'm sorry. Do we have any other questions, comments?
I started to type out my response about what Mitra and I have talked about, but I was failing at it, so I gave up. But I just wanted to say that, you know, when I've talked to her about it, she's expressed concerns about like the new buildings that are going up, but also that, you know, her perspective is one of long-term, and that more buildings is still more spaces. And if that means that the rent there is going to be higher, than rent in places that are not as new will hopefully not be as high by comparison, and that there might be, you know, less of a supply and demand situation. So, I mean, you know, she's like, it's not a great situation for anybody realistically. And I think the protections that we can put in place, I'm so sorry, guys. The protections that we can put in place for like BIPOC business owners and communities, and helping people buy rather than rent if they're able to and if they want to, are something that we should definitely be investing more in. We can't really do it here at this level, but we can encourage the city and the county and the state to put those provisions in.
That's good.
Thank you. Deanne, did you have something?
Yeah, I just was going to ask you, Bill, the Port Authority and their interest in exploring the zoning. Is that to kind of better position them as, you know, this transit-oriented development, you know, cruises down the road into the future?
I don't know. I don't know. There is a need for jobs. The Port Authority model for industrial development is not exactly transit-oriented. I guess I would just say that Emma and I have identified this as an issue to pay attention to in upcoming transit-oriented development. I'm not sure how that's going to play out.
Thank you.
Okay, it is 9 to 8. We do have a couple things on our agenda that we have to, business items that we need to do. If anybody has anything else that they'd like to ask Bill and Emma?
Just thanks a lot for the time on the agenda. I really appreciate the discussion and the questions, and look forward to working with you going forward. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
Thank
much.
you, Bill.
Yeah,
Bill,
thank you.
And thank you, Emma.
Emma.
Did your kid find you yet, Bill? No. Okay, great.
He's hiding out in the garage.
Jack,
won't
are we
find
gonna
me.
get a copy of those slides?
I can send it out, yes.
Cool.
That'd be slick.
Alrighty, let's go through these. Approval of the minutes.
Thanks for doing them, Marcy. I'd like to make one change, which I already did on our agenda. I added an extra P to the Knapp Miller name. And I'm assuming that in the minutes, the purple line is the rush line.
Yes.
Yeah, so there are two places where it says purple. We want to change that to rush line. Oh, and I was actually in attendance. I just couldn't act as secretary. So we could add my name. Are there any other corrections, additions?
So the purple line and the rush line are the same thing. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
A long time ago, Metro Transit was calling everything by a name, and then they switched to colors. Colors and letters.
So is it going to be the purple line going forward?
If Prince has anything to say about it, yes.
I believe it will be on the maps as purple. But, you know, there's going to be a certain point where they're not going to pay for all those colors on the map. But I think it's going to, I don't know.
And
It's good to hang loose and be flexible at this point about that.
okay.
Okay. Any other changes? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion. Anybody?
I move that we approve the minutes as amended by Mary Matt Miller, no, by Stuart.
With 2 Ps.
I need a
With 2
second.
Ps.
I second.
Has been moved and seconded. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
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 All right. All right. Anybody opposed? Thank you very much. Minutes have been approved. PPC monthly financial report and status. Ms. Janie Anderson.
Hi, I have nothing too much to report. Let me see here. We have our grants back into our savings account. I can't remember if I said that last week. The city has sped up and now reimbursing a little bit faster as we are getting through this COVID pandemic slowly and surely. And our next item also talks about a financial committee, which that excites me as the treasurer, and hopefully we can talk potentially about changing banks, as this one is somewhat difficult to work with. It's a little clunky, and so I look forward to those further discussions.
Thank you.
Some clunkier, if you want to look at those.
What'd you say?
I said, I know of a couple that are even clunkier if you want to look at those.
No, I want less clunky. Just to even get Jack to see the accounts was difficult. Not even have power over them, just to see them.
Thank you. Looking for less clunk. Update on the fundraising and nomination committees. Who would like to take that? Anybody? Who is on the fundraising committee?
I mean, I have no updates this month. July is just a bad month. we didn't meet as a fundraising committee this month, so
Okay,
we'll be having an email go out about that. I think in the coming weeks to
okay.
be
Thank you
in
very
touch.
much. I appreciate that. Nomination committee, we didn't have anything other than conversing with the team. Correct? Patricia, Bill? Did you have any updates, Bill?
Nothing to add.
Okay.
There was a joint meeting, wasn't there, that I missed? And so I think Jacob's not alone, that in July was a difficult
Missed
month.
that too, so I can't help you much.
Yeah.
I was there, but
Anyone else there?
and I'm on both committees, but I don't, Jack, can you?
I was there. I feel like we made a lot of progress, but particularly towards the planning around the annual meeting. So we didn't talk a lot about banking, and we didn't really nail down what the nominating committee is going to be doing proactively towards the election. But that's work to do. So I guess, you know, a question I'll put out there is what folks' appetite is for meeting in the next couple of weeks versus putting it off until, you know, later in August. So if you have thoughts.
I personally would like to meet. I think that there's a lot of planning that needs to go into this, and we're behind a little bit. Things are going to come up faster than we expect.
Okay.
I just got permission from the church, so we're good to go. Just got permission for not permission, but the parade, as I said earlier. So there's planning for that I'm going to be involved in, but we need to start moving on the planning of the breakfast and the annual meeting and stuff like that. So
Is our annual meeting going to be at the church along with the breakfast?
yes, they're one and the same.
Okay.
Including the elections.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think it would be good if we, hi little buddy.
Sorry, he asked to say hi this time. He was like, I need to say hi to the meeting. Say hi.
Do you have a joke for us, Langston?
No joke? It's a joke. Damster.
That's pretty funny. That's a
Don't
funny
encourage
joke.
him.
So my thought would be that we, that was a great joke, thank you. That we start planning for a meeting pretty soon, like within the next couple of weeks. Either a joint nomination, joint nominations and fundraising. Because the more people we have, the better.
Can I get a quick show of hands of who likes Tuesday versus Wednesday or Thursday? We'll do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We're Saturday morning. So who likes Tuesday nights for a meeting, for a joint nominating fundraising? Okay, so I see 5, 6, 7. I see a lot of Tuesdays. Okay, anybody like Wednesdays better?
They're okay.
Okay, how about Thursdays?
Not as good.
Okay, so it sounds like a Tuesday night. All right. So
Well, it depends on what night though. Okay.
Yeah. So the only Tuesday night conflicts I'm aware of are PABA. And I'm trying to remember which they're not the first Tuesday. Are they the second?
ESNDC is the first Tuesday and PABA is the second Tuesday.
Okay. And executive committee is the third Tuesday and the full board is the fourth Tuesday.
Right.
So we could do them Tuesdays earlier, or we could switch over to, I didn't see a lot of Wednesdays and I saw fewer Thursdays.
You want to ask about Wednesday again?
Wednesday's okay.
How about Wednesday?
Wednesday? Does Wednesday work? Not as well, huh?
Not as well.
The only conflict I have is the 11th. But
Okay, so Rebecca, you have conflicts on the 3rd, the 10th, and the 11th, right? How about Wednesday, the 4th?
oh, I don't have anything that day.
Show of hands about who likes Wednesday, the 4th. Okay. Let's do Wednesday, the 4th. Thank you, everybody.
Yay, thank you. And if anybody else would like to join besides who's on the, just come and show up.
Okay. I'm just thinking I might not be able to do the 4th, but I'll check that. Okay. Thanks, everybody. We'll make it work.
Yay! So as it says in the announcements, save the date, September 25th, 8 to 11. This is what we're planning. The annual meeting and the elections at the Arlington Hills Lutheran Church in the Fellowship Hall with pancakes. And then Marcy has an update on the art vote. Oh, there you are.
We were finally able to get together and vote. We had all reviewed all of the artist submissions. There were a bunch. I think there were almost 50, if I remember correctly. And we had to narrow down. And yeah, so we had to rank them based on their proposal, community involvement, etc., and artistic merit, and all of that. And we ended up ranking them, met together to discuss our top so many, and then did a final ranking of the top like 25 of each of ours. And so we have basically reached out to the top 6 out of the cumulative rating amongst all the people who are on the panel, and 3 have confirmed so far. And we expect that the other 3 will also be confirming. So until those are kind of like announced more broadly, I probably won't like disclose exactly who got the jobs, but at least we know for sure folks are getting plugged in. So it's finally happening.
Good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you for that update. That sounds wonderful.
Are they St. Paul artists? Do you know?
Some of them are, and it's nice because I feel like people on the committee really honed in on, especially community engagement or like the story of the artist, and a lot of them incorporated their own personal stories of migration, even if they aren't from St. Paul explicitly. And so even if not, we feel like we tried to be very intentional about the folks that were voted for and whatever else.
Okay. Very good.
Alrighty, any other announcements or comments or questions that you'd like to put forth? Alrighty, oh, go ahead.
Did we, how's Lynette?
Yeah.
How's Lynette?
Lynette, I visited her yesterday, and I did bring her a book of flowers from all of us and a card. She's looking really good. She's out and talking and laughing and stuff like that. So it went to her. She had emergency appendectomy. But apparently it went well.
She's been through so much.
Oh my God, I know.
Incredible.
Something always happens. But yeah, she says thank you very much.
Thank you, Rebecca, for suggesting that and doing that.
Yeah, no problem. Give me an excuse to go visit. All right, our next meeting will be Tuesday, August 24th at 6:30 p.m. somewhere. Anybody like to adjourn?
So moved.
Motions to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Alrighty, Sam, thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Alrighty. See you all later.
Good to see you all. Stay cool. Check on your
Thanks,
neighbors.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.